got the AFC East up next, and I thought we could start with the Patriots.
All right.
And obviously they had that big signing, and I'm not a big Cam fan, but he's weirdly grown on me as he went to the Patriots. But I went away from Cam as my question, and I went with how will Belichick lose a pick this year? Because obviously I just think the world is setting up around him where he's going to find a way to cheat this year. And with all the people opting out and stuff, and like this is like a prove it year for Belichick. Like, you lose Brady, and obviously he didn't plan on like the most NFL players on a team opting out this year.
Mm-hmm.
But I think he's like gonna work hard. He's always been known. I read the book about him by Ian O'Connor, Belichick, probably 2 years ago, and I have a story from it, a little quote, and this is a dude quoting him about when he played lacrosse. He said, he taught me how to make my lacrosse stick illegal and then fix it before the ref could catch you. He strung it loose, the depth of the pocket. In those days, the depth could no longer deeper than the ball. He made it extra deep. If someone on the other team said, I had an illegal stick, Bill showed me how to pull a string to tighten it up and then hand it to the ref. So
wow.
He's been a cheater his whole life, and I love Belichick.
The Bill Belichick is a cheater podcast. But we're gonna slander Eli Manning and slander Bill Belichick, so we get both ends of the spectrum here.
Yeah, and I just some with fake crowd noise is my guess this year. He's gonna figure something out to get a competitive edge. So
it's interesting how different my answer is with it still being the exact same question, because my question is, what does Bill have in store for us this season? And I didn't really think of it from the perspective of what kind of like dirty schemes he's going to come up with, but how is he going to handle this now in shambles defense? But how is he going to handle running an offense without Tom Brady now? This is such new territory for the Patriots. It's been like 20 years since people have questioned, really genuinely questioned. Like, there's always been is the dynasty over question, but really genuinely look at the Patriots and look at them and think, is this a team that can win football games? Because you don't really know. Cam Newton's looked good in practice, apparently, but Cam Newton isn't Tom Brady. So how does Bill Belichick work with Cam Newton as opposed to Brady, or I guess Jarrett Stidham is there as well? And I think Bill's up for the challenge. I think Bill almost is frothing at the mouth to prove that he's a great coach, not only now without Brady, but without a lot of key players. Quick story about Belichick. Over the summer, I took part of this podcast where we went over weird sport history, and we covered the year that the NFL players went on strike. And so they hired just random Joe Schmoes from around the world to run teams for the first 4 weeks of the NFL season. And Bill Belichick at the time was the defensive coordinator of the Giants. And he took a lot of time and effort in developing an entirely new defensive scheme for this Giants defense that no longer had Lawrence Taylor, no longer had any of the familiar NFL names on that team. Instead, he had just a bunch of random dudes who they hired 2 weeks ago, and he had to simplify and create a defense that would work. And he worked very hard at it and wanted to make it work. So I'll be curious to see if we see that kind of Bill Belichick again this season with an entirely different Patriots team from last year.
I'm honestly, I don't think I've ever been this excited for a Patriots team, because I don't cheer for a Patriots team, but I kind of want them to do well, because I fall on the side that Belichick means more to the Patriots dynasty than Brady.
Yeah. I mean, I've always been very much as much as Bill Belichick rubs me wrong, I very much believe Bill Belichick is just a brilliant football coach.
Mm-hmm. So I'm excited to see what he does. And honestly, I think Spygate, Deflategate, all that stuff is kind of funny to me. So I'd be fine if something comes out where he has a little scandal this year. But moving on, we've got the Bills. And my question is, there's been some reports coming out, basically. Cole Beasley was quoted. He is playing more confident than ever, talking about Josh Allen. My question is, is more confidence enough for Josh Allen? Does that really matter? I know we always get those training camp things from beat writers and stuff, like this player's more confident, they worked out, they hit the gym this year. Well, guess what? Josh Allen, other QBs do the same thing, and they come into the season more confident. And I know yet at weapons this year, Stephon Diggs and stuff. But like, is that going to be enough? Like, is Josh Allen willing to make that step? And is, them claiming that he's showing more leadership and throwing balls that he wouldn't dare to throw, is that going to be enough for the Bills to make that leap this year?
Yeah, that's a good question. And, something about the Bills that always stands out to me is just how stacked this roster is right now. This depth chart is fantastic. It's probably, in my opinion, one of the most complete rosters in the league behind like the Ravens. And I mean, there's not a lot of teams I can think of that have as good of a depth chart. There's just two spots that I have question marks. One of them is Josh Allen, which is a pretty important question mark. But for me, my question is about that other group, and that is, how will the offensive line hold up in year two? They were okay last year, and they're having a lot of pieces return this season, but there's still a question of, will they be good enough to make this Bills team a great team? Because all the other pieces, they lead to this team being fantastic. The Stephon Diggs was the signing they needed, the trade they needed, because now suddenly that receiving core is fantastic. I am a huge proponent of having a number one wide receiver, like a true number one wide receiver. It does so much for a wide receiving core when a guy has to be schemed to stop, has to be double teamed, has to all these things, because then guys like John Brown, guys like Cole Beasley are going to be incredibly effective when they don't have as much attention on them.
You think Bill O'Brien agrees with you?
We're going to talk about that later, because I actually, my thing about the Texans has to do with that a lot. I'm shocked that I'm not shocked actually that you're bringing that up, because I'm kind of bringing this up now to tee it in for later with the Texans. But that offensive line, will they let Josh Allen be that successful? Because obviously it's up to Josh Allen to make this team a Super Bowl contending team. Because if Josh Allen proves to have a good year, this team could be competing for a Super Bowl. That's how good this roster is. I am a very pro Bills person this season.
I don't think anyone despises the Bills. Everyone loves the Bills Mafia.
Yeah.
I know they've been bad for a long time, so I feel like people are fine with them being good and then kicking out the Patriots. But it'll be interesting to see how Josh Allen and that offensive line. Those are two probably most of the important positions on offense.
Yeah, that's a big thing.
It's going to be interesting. But I have the Jets up next, and my question is Adam Gase the right guy? Because
it's a good question.
It's either Sam Darnold or Adam Gase this year to me. If they have another bad year, they gotta change one or the other. They can't keep on going the same way. And the last three offensives that Gase has called plays for have finished 31st, 26th, and 27th in efficiency. So,
well, that backs up my opinion of Adam Gase.
Yeah, I believe Sam Darnold could be good, but I'm not a huge fan of Gase. And Mark, have you heard the story about his child being born, Adam Gase?
No, I can't say I have.
All right, well, it's kind of unrelated. Some people tied into leadership and him and stuff like that, and being kind of like, I guess, pulled back and not very personal. But this is his wife being quoted here. She goes, so they pulled the baby out of me and said, "It's a boy," Jennifer says. "They didn't even put my organs back and sew me up before he's like, 'You good?' I said, 'Yeah, I'm good.' He said, 'All right then, I'm out.' They said, 'You want to cut the umbilical cord?' He said, 'No, I'm good,' and left. And then he met Peyton Manning like 2 hours later or something, like at 2 p.m. And Peyton Manning was like shocked he was there. And I was like,
yeah.
This is the most crazy story about Adam Gase.
That is insane. That is like, that's like sociopathic levels right there. Like Adam Gase, I don't know how many emotions that man holds. I don't want to talk too much trash about any individual person, but Adam Gase baffles me sometimes. And when you say Sam Darnold or Adam Gase, I'm very pro Sam Darnold and I'm very anti Adam Gase. So that would be my stance on it. But obviously, during the season, that narrative could change. But that is an astounding story.
Yeah,
there's a lot to unpack there.
The first time I read it, I started dying laughing because I was like, this is so interesting. But
it's bizarre. Yeah, my question is, along those lines, is where is Darnold's help coming from? Because when I look at this roster, when I look at this depth chart for the Jets, there is not a lot to draw inspiration from, especially with Jamal Adams gone now. That defense, the defensive line is decent. They are very good at stopping the run. But outside of that, you don't have to worry too much about stopping the run if you're getting passed all over oblivion instead, which then puts it on Sam Darnold, who has a mending offensive line right now. They're trying to get better. And then you have a receiving core that just lost Robbie Anderson, who, I mean, without Enunwa there was their best receiver, and you don't have Enunwa either. I just don't know, where does Sam Darnold get help from? This guy can win you games. Sam Darnold was incredible last season in the stretch that he actually played near the end of the year. Can anybody else on the team win a football game for him, though? Because he can't do it every time, especially with this roster. So that's my question, is who else is going to win Jets football games except for Sam Darnold?
You're telling me you're not a believer in the Duke grad, Jamison Crowder?
I like Crowder, but I don't think Crowder is a number one receiver, and I don't think Crowder is going to win you single-handedly football games.
Yeah, I'd put him at like a wide receiver 3, but yeah, maybe low end wide receiver 2.
Yeah, I think I like him as a 2.
Yeah, but it'll be interesting, and I love Sam Darnold as well. Not a big Adam Gase guy. So yeah. We've got our last team in this division, the Dolphins. And my question is more not necessarily like tactics or anything like that, but more of kind of like a concept, more philosophy by the Dolphins this year. And are they ready to play Tua? Like, will they be willing to do it? I think they've got 4 new offensive lines starters this year. So it's like, do you want to put them behind that is the question. And then, I mean, it's going to take more than 1 year to rebuild. There's no point of throwing it in the fire this year. In my opinion, you might as well just leave Ryan Fitzpatrick win a couple games or something. I think just be patient, but it'll be interesting to see if they're willing to play him this year, or if they just say, you know what, we won't play you this year. So
yeah, their philosophy on the Tua situation is going to be interesting to look into. I'm a firm believer in, if Fitzmagic is on a football team, Fitzmagic plays. It just happens. No matter what you do, it just happens. So we'll see if that narrative continues this season for me. Along the same lines of how you're concerned about whether this team is worth putting Tua on, I'm going to piggyback off of that a little bit and ask the question, can they control the game through running the ball? That's my question, because now, last season, the running back core was forgettable at best. And the offensive line last year for running was awful at best. And together, it combined to make an absolutely abysmal running game that was ridiculously bad. It was terrible. Their yards per average, or yards per carry for all of their running backs, was phenomenally bad. But now you have Matt Breida. Now you have Jordan Howard, 2 running backs who have proven to be successful in the past. And you've got an attempt at fixing an offensive line here, new guys. Can you actually control the pace of the game running the ball? Because you need to be able to run the ball at least somewhat to win football games. You've got the running backs to do it, and you're trying to build an offensive line to actually successfully block for run plays. Can they make that work? Because that's probably going to be a huge indicator as to whether it's worth starting Tua this season or not.
Are you a believer in Tua, Mark, to be able to, I guess, be a franchise guy?
I really like Tua Tagovailoa. I think that he can. Whether he will or not remains to be seen. I do like the Brian Flores coached offense, though, or the Brian Flores Dolphins team, excuse me. I liked what he did last season. The miraculous work he did to turn that team around within a year was phenomenal. Their defense looks good. Tua has a task ahead of him. It's going to be a challenge. I think he's up for it, whether he stays healthy and whether the coaching staff's there for him. We'll see how it goes. I think he can do it.
Yeah, I honestly, not even like talent-wise, I believe in him too, but just like from like hearing stories and reading stories about him at Alabama and be able to do the things he did there at such a young age, I think that's someone that can help turn around a franchise in dire need of hopefully turn around to be a competitive football club.